Hey marketing students, how's it going? Welcome to your second presentation on marketing research. We're going to shift gears a little bit, and instead of talking about different ways or different reasons why data is collected, we're going to look at the actual obtaining the data and conducting the research and how do we actually do that. But first, let me remind you that if you have any questions during the presentation or during the video that you're watching today, make sure that you post them here on our Today's Meet. The website is listed there, todaysmeet.com/questions about marketing. You type your name in underneath where it says nickname, click join, and then a new box will appear allowing you to write your questions, and they'll appear on the left where it says listen. We'll answer those in an appropriate amount of time as we continue to discuss this the following day in class. So, as you can see, the big picture question with this unit is, what is the best way to find out what customers want? And hopefully the simple answer that you may be thinking of is ask. Just ask your customers what it is that they're interested in. You can do research for any number of different reasons, as we discussed in the previous presentation, but it is important to know what your customers want if you expect to keep them as your customers. So the marketing research process, or the collection of data, if we were to break it into a 5-step process, looks like this. First of all, of course, we have to know what exactly it is that we have a problem with, or we have a question about, and we want to actually solve. Once we've defined what the problem or question is, then we can look at different ways of obtaining the data, and that's largely what we're going to look at today. Once we obtain that data, then we have to be able to look at it and analyze it and break it down and actually determine what all of the answers actually mean. Fourth, then, if we were a business, we would then recommend solutions. How do we overcome the challenges that the research has shown that we are facing? And then fifth, we're actually applying the results. We're creating some sort of action so that the same problems don't continue to occur. We're going to focus on this first part of the presentation on these two topics, primary data and secondary data. And these are both ways that we're going to actually collect the data. It's just a matter of how we actually collect it. Primary data is collected for the specific purpose that you're doing the research for. So if you want to know how do we increase sales, your survey, your experiment, your questionnaire, it's going to be asking questions that are specific to that particular question. So the important thing to know about primary data is that it's done for the first time. It's for your purposes only. And while somebody else may be able to use that down the road, right now you're collecting it for yourself and again for your specific purpose. Typically when we use primary data, we're going to either write surveys, do observations, or experiments. So surveys are pretty self-explanatory, and that's what we're going to focus most of our time on with this presentation. You can see that surveys can be done by internet, by phone, by mail. You're going to get the opportunity to do some internet surveys and have each other take your surveys, so be aware that's coming soon. Typically with a survey you want a lot of people to take it, and while it would be great to have tons and tons of data, that takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. So typically what is used is what's called a sample group, and a sample group represents the parts of the whole. For example, if you have a target market made up of a certain percentage of gender and ethnic background and income levels and whatnot, your sample group should also be representative of that group. They should be the same percentages of gender, ethnic background, and income level. Your surveys can also be personal in nature, or They could be more like a focus group. Sorry about my spelling there. A focus group is done in a controlled environment. And I'll show you an example of this in class, but think about the current car commercials that are on, where they bring together groups of people and ask them what types of cars they like. That's a focus group. You may have even participated in one, as we have many different marketing research companies located in the Cedar Rapids, Marion area. Another example of a primary data collection method is an observation. There's a couple of specific examples that are shown here. One of them is a mystery shopper. A mystery shopper is used to typically evaluate customer service. So a company like Target, let's say, uses mystery shoppers to make sure that their employees are asking specific questions when customers are checking out, like, do you want to sign up for a Target card and get 10 or 15% off of your purchase today? They also want to know things about how helpful they are during the shopping process, etc., etc. Another example would be point of sale research, where instead of looking at the customer service, you're evaluating the buyer's behavior. And when you look at buying behavior, you might look and observe a customer in a shopping situation, and you may ask them after they've already checked out or after they've left the store what they were there to buy. Was it a good experience? Was there a reason why they bought one product instead of another, or why they didn't buy anything at all? The third type of primary data research is called experiment. And typically we think about experiments really being used in more of a scientific nature, but companies use experiments for a variety of different research methods. Packaging design is the one that I will focus on here. You can see the picture of the Sun Chips compostable package. This was an example, or this is an example of a company that is trying to do something good, trying to make something, a package that can go in the landfill and not take forever to break down. But what they also found is that in the making of these bags, they were extremely loud. And so when you bought the product, when you opened the product, when you at all touched the product, it was 2 or 3 times louder than anything else. And so in their experiments, they should have probably taken note that that would have been a problem for some customers. With an experiment, as it says, the idea is to change some variables while keeping others constant. Another example of an experiment in a scientific means would be where you've got a drug that you want tested. You have a variety of people take the drug that might benefit from it, and then you record the results. Some of those people are going to get the actual drug, while others are going to get something called a placebo, typically an alternative to the actual drug. Now, primary data is really valuable, but as I've already mentioned, it takes a lot of time and it also takes a lot of money. So secondary data is a faster and cheaper way to get data that may be valuable to you. It's already collected. Somebody else has already done all of the legwork for you, and that's what makes it obviously a lot faster. It's cheaper because a lot of times information can be shared electronically and online, and is accessible from a variety of different sources. The simplest example of secondary data would be the census that I showed you in the previous presentation. That's been collected by the government. Hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars have probably been spent to actually do that research, and then it's posted for anybody to see. As you might imagine, because this has been done at a previous time, it may not be accurate anymore. As we know, Communities constantly change if we continue to talk about the census, and so populations may be different than when the research was previously done. It may also not be suitable because the questions being asked may not be exactly what you want to have answered. Here are some other examples. We mentioned the census being a secondary data source. Specialized research companies also post other information. Business publications and trade organizations also publish data all of the time. Now let's move on to how do we actually write our survey or questionnaire, and you'll have an opportunity to do this in class, so just be prepared. When we're writing a questionnaire, the two things that we must have is reliability and validity. And as you can see here, reliability exists when the same results occur every time it's repeated. So if you ask the same question 10 times, will the same person responding to that question answer the same way? If so, or if it's close, we would call that to be a reliable question or questionnaire. Something is valid when what is intended to be measured is actually measured. So if you ask, what's your favorite fruit, an apple or an orange, and somebody answers red, that's a problem. It's not a valid question. When we look at surveys, as we've already mentioned, surveys can be done in person. They could be done via mail or email. They could be done via the web. They can even be done over the phone in more traditional ways. They have been done over the phone, especially when those of us that are older than you remember having a landline and everybody sitting down for dinner at the same time, and oftentimes you would have telemarketers calling during dinner time asking parents largely to take surveys. There's a lot of different types of questions that you could ask. Some of them are better for others. Open-ended questions are great because you get good detail and you get exactly what the customer's thinking or what the respondent is thinking. So it's great for details, but as you might imagine, if you're asking the same question to, let's say, 1,000 different people, you could potentially have 1,000 different answers. So analyzing those answers becomes very labor intensive. So a lot of times questions that are being used on surveys tend to be yes or no questions, tend to be multiple choice questions, tend to have a rating scale, or even a level of agreement. And we'll talk about all of those in class as well. Some survey guidelines. Make sure that your survey is short enough to be answered quickly. Make sure that your questions are written clearly with headings and sections that allow the person taking the survey to understand exactly what they're answering. Make sure that if you use a consistent ranking scale or a rating scale, that you use the same one. Don't use a 5-point scale for some questions and a 10 or 20-point scale for other questions. Use the same level throughout. Also avoid leading questions and including bias. So don't ask your survey respondents, don't you think that, and then the question. That would get them to want to answer that certain way. And then also include any demographic information at the end of your survey. Remember, you want your respondents to be as honest as possible about the questions that they're asking. And the best way to do that is to not have them put their name at the very beginning. Subconsciously, they may not want to answer the questions honestly when they know that their survey, their name is on the survey. So include that information at the end, because after all, you want them to answer the questions more than you probably want their name on things. That's it for this presentation. Thanks for watching. See you tomorrow in class.